Welcome back, my friend. I am so happy you are here with me again. Take a moment right now to close your eyes, if you can. Breathe slowly. And imagine a warm kitchen somewhere in southern Italy. The smell of flour and water fills the air. A grandmother stands at a wooden table, her hands moving quickly, pressing and folding a soft, pale dough. She has done this 1,000 times. She learned it from her mother, who learned it from her mother before her. The recipe is simple, but the story behind it goes back further than you can imagine. Much further than that kitchen. Much further than Italy itself. Today, I want to take you on another journey. A journey through time. A journey through flavor and culture and human connection. We are going to discover the long and fascinating history of pasta. Yes, pasta. That simple, beautiful thing that people all over the world eat every single day. But the story behind it is ancient and surprising and full of mystery. So relax, listen carefully, and let the story carry you. This is Woven English, and this story begins not in Italy, but somewhere far away, somewhere you might not expect. Let us go back more than 4,000 years ago to the ancient world, long before restaurants, long before supermarkets, long before anyone had ever heard the word spaghetti. In ancient China, around 2000 BC, archaeologists made a remarkable discovery. In 2005, they found a bowl buried deep in the ground near the Yellow River. Inside that bowl were noodles. Yes, noodles, 4,000 years old, perfectly preserved under layers of earth. They were made from millet, a kind of grain that grew in that region. This was the oldest pasta ever discovered, and it told us something very important. People had been making food from grain and water for a very, very long time. In ancient China, noodles were not just food. They were symbols. Noodles are long, and because they are long, they became a symbol of long life. Even today, in Chinese culture, people eat long noodles on birthdays. You must not cut them, because cutting the noodle means cutting your life short. Is that not a beautiful idea? That the shape of your food carries meaning, carries hope, carries a wish for the future. At the same time, in the ancient Middle East and in parts of the Mediterranean, people were also making simple doughs from grain and water. They dried these doughs in the sun to preserve them. Dried food lasts longer. You can carry it on long journeys. You can store it through the winter. This was very important in the ancient world, where there were no refrigerators, no cans, no plastic bags. Drying pasta was one of the earliest ways that humans preserved food, and that simple idea would change history. Now we travel west, to the Arab world, and this is where the story becomes very interesting. Many people believe that pasta came to Italy from China, carried by the famous traveler Marco Polo in the 13th century. You may have heard this story. It is told in books, in movies, in restaurants all over the world. But historians today believe it is probably not true, or at least not the complete truth. The real connection between the East and the West came earlier, and it came through a different route. In the 9th and 10th centuries, Arab traders and travelers crossed the Mediterranean Sea. They brought with them many things: new mathematics, new science, new medicine, and new food. Among the things they brought was a dried pasta made from durum wheat. Durum wheat is a very hard, very strong kind of wheat. It grows well in hot, dry climates, like North Africa and the Middle East. And it makes a pasta that can be dried and stored for a very long time. The Arabs brought this dried pasta to Sicily, the large island at the bottom of Italy. Sicily was a crossing point between worlds, between Africa and Europe, between East and West, between old ideas and new ones. And it was here, in Sicily, that pasta first arrived in what we now call Italy. A 12th century Arab geographer named Al-Idrisi wrote about Sicily. He described a food made from flour, shaped into strings, and dried in the sun. People were making and selling this food in large quantities, he said. It was already popular. It was already being exported to other places. This is one of the earliest written records of pasta in Europe. And it was written not by an Italian, but by an Arab scholar, traveling through a world that was already mixing and sharing and discovering together. So the idea arrived in Sicily. But what happened next? How did pasta become Italian? How did it become one of the most recognized foods in the entire world? The answer, my friend, is time, patience, and the genius of Italian cooking. Over the next few centuries, Italian cooks took this simple imported idea and they transformed it. They experimented with different shapes, different sizes, different textures. They learned that the shape of pasta changes everything. Long, thin pasta, like spaghetti, holds a light, smooth sauce. Short, thick pasta, like rigatoni, catches a heavy, rich sauce. Small pasta, like orzo, works beautifully in soups. Each shape was designed for a purpose. Each shape had a reason, and slowly, a whole language of pasta was born. By the 13th and 14th centuries, pasta was being made all across Italy, in the north, in the south, in cities, in small villages. But the pasta in the north was different from the pasta in the south. In northern Italy, where the land was green and rich with dairy farms, cooks made fresh pasta with eggs. The pasta was soft and golden and rich. They used it in dishes like lasagna and tagliatelle. In the south, where the climate was drier and hotter, cooks used durum wheat without eggs. They dried their pasta in the sun, just as the Arabs had done. This dried pasta lasted longer. It was cheaper. It was practical. And it became the pasta that would travel the world. There is a city in the south called Naples, and Naples became the home of the most famous pasta of all. Can you guess which one? Yes, spaghetti. In the streets of Naples, in the 17th and 18th centuries, you could see something extraordinary. Vendors stood on street corners, selling cooked spaghetti from large pots. People would come and buy a small portion. They would hold the spaghetti above their heads and lower it into their mouths with their fingers. Eating, standing in the street, it was fast, it was cheap, it was delicious. These street sellers were called maccheroni vendors, and the people who ate their pasta were called mangiamaccheroni, which means macaroni eaters. This was not an insult. It was simply what people called the Neapolitans, because they loved their pasta so much, and they ate it everywhere, in public, without embarrassment, without ceremony, just with pleasure. But here is something important that many people do not know. When pasta first became popular in Italy, it was eaten very differently from how we eat it today. There was no tomato sauce. Not yet, because the tomato had not yet arrived in Europe. The tomato is a plant that comes from the Americas, from Mexico and South America. And Europeans did not know it existed until the 16th century, when Spanish explorers brought it back across the Atlantic Ocean. And even then, it took time for Europeans to trust the tomato. People were suspicious of it. Some thought it was poisonous. It is related to some plants that are indeed dangerous. So, for many years, the tomato sat in gardens as a decoration. Something beautiful to look at, but not to eat. So what did people eat with their pasta? Before tomatoes, they ate it with cheese, with butter, with honey, sometimes even with sugar and spices. Pasta with sugar sounds very strange to us today, but in medieval Europe, sweet and savory were often mixed together. Our modern idea of pasta covered in rich red tomato sauce is actually a relatively recent invention. It was only in the 18th century, in Naples, that people began to cook tomatoes and put them on pasta, and when they did, everything changed. The combination of pasta and tomato sauce was so delicious, so simple, so perfect, that it spread quickly, first through Italy, then through Europe, then through the entire world. It was a combination that was waiting to be discovered, a marriage of two ingredients, one ancient, one new, that together created something neither could achieve alone. Now we travel across the ocean again, because pasta was about to find a new home. A home where it would become more popular than anywhere else in the world. In the late 19th century and early 20th century, millions of Italians left their country. They were poor, they were hungry, they were looking for a better life. Many of them went to America, to cities like New York, Boston, and Chicago. They carried almost nothing with them, but they carried their recipes. They carried their memory of food. They carried the taste of home. In the New World, these Italian immigrants worked hard. They opened small restaurants. They made pasta in their kitchens. They shared their food with their neighbors. And slowly, American people began to taste and love Italian food. But something interesting happened. In America, Italian pasta changed. The immigrants adapted their recipes to what was available. The tomatoes tasted different. The wheat was different. Portions became larger. Because in America, food was more plentiful than back home, and so a new kind of Italian food was born. Italian-American food, with bigger portions, richer sauces, more cheese, more meat. Spaghetti and meatballs, for example, is not really a traditional Italian dish. In Italy, meatballs and pasta are rarely served together. But in America, where meat was affordable, this combination became a symbol of Italian cooking. It was Italian food, filtered through the American dream. And then came the invention that changed everything. The invention that turned pasta from something you made at home into something the whole world could buy in any shop, on any street. In the early 20th century, pasta factories became more advanced. Machines could now cut and shape and dry pasta in enormous quantities. The price dropped. pasta became cheap and available and convenient. And after the Second World War, when families wanted easy meals, pasta became a staple in kitchens around the world. And so we arrive in the modern world, a world where pasta is everywhere. In Japan, you can find ramen, long noodles in a rich broth, a cousin of pasta evolved in a completely different direction. In Thailand, there is pad thai, flat rice noodles, stir-fried with egg and vegetables. In Germany, there is spätzle, a soft egg noodle, traditional for centuries. Each of these is a different branch of the same ancient family, the family of dough, mixed from grain and water, shaped and cooked and eaten with joy. Today, there are more than 600 recognized shapes of pasta in Italy. 600, each with its own name, its own history, its own best use. Farfalle, which means butterflies. Fusilli, which means little spindles. Orecchiette, which means little ears. Someone looked at a small piece of pasta and said, "It looks like an ear," and gave it a name. And that name survived for centuries. Language and food and memory, all mixed together. And today, in restaurants and homes, in every country, in every city, people are boiling water, adding salt, dropping in pasta, and waiting those few minutes for something simple to become something wonderful. The history of pasta is the history of human movement. It is the story of how ideas travel, how cultures meet and share and transform each other. It began with ancient hands pressing grain and water together in China. It traveled through the Arab world, across the Mediterranean Sea. It arrived in Sicily. It spread through Italy. It crossed the Atlantic Ocean. It fed millions of immigrants dreaming of a better life. It fed soldiers far from home, and children on ordinary Tuesday evenings. And now, it sits in your kitchen perhaps, waiting. Pasta teaches us something quiet and important. Great things come from simple ingredients: grain, water, time, and care, and the willingness to take a simple idea and carry it with you wherever you go, to share it with strangers who will make it their own. And that, my friend, is the most beautiful thing about food. It belongs to everyone. Now I want to speak to you directly for a moment. Not about pasta, but about this moment, right here. You listen to this whole story in English. And that is not a small thing. Every sentence you followed, every word you caught, every image that formed in your mind. That is your English growing stronger, growing more comfortable, growing more yours. Learning a language is exactly like making pasta from scratch. At first, the dough feels wrong. It sticks to your hands. It does not come together. But you keep working, you keep folding and pressing, and slowly, something changes. Slowly, it becomes smooth and right and yours. So keep going, my friend. I will be here with another story, another journey, another quiet adventure. Leave me a comment and tell me, do you like pasta? And what is your favorite dish? Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. And until we meet again, take care of yourself, keep learning, and never stop being curious.